you're in the right place. This is Girls Can Tell, hosted by Trent Erickson, here to say what everyone else is too polite to.
There's a sentence I hear all the time that tells me a lot more about how someone thinks than you realize. And it took me a while to see what that actually means. We're still friends. I don't mean friends like coworkers who occasionally cross paths, or people who used to know each other and now are polite from a distance. I mean friends. Texting, talking, sharing daily updates, showing up and hanging out together at the same events, still very emotionally present in each other's lives in a way that almost looks identical to when they were together. Every time I hear it now, I don't challenge it. I don't say anything at all. I just note it. Because in my experience, and backed by what research shows happens most often, when someone tells you they're still friends with their ex, what they're really telling you is that the relationship never fully ended. It just changed its shape. There's usually a reason they give, sometimes several. They have kids together. The breakup was amicable. They've known each other forever. He has a girlfriend now. It's purely platonic. They're just close. They're like best friends. But none of those reasons change what actually happens next most of the time. What happens next is confusion, blurred boundaries, questionable decisions, and a third party who eventually realizes they walked into something that already has a history, a certain rhythm, and an emotional momentum that started long before they arrived. I want to talk about why this keeps happening, why so many people believe they're the exception, and why this idea survives even when it repeatedly causes problems. And it has nothing to do with jealousy, control, or insecurity. It has to do with how attachment actually works, and how most people misunderstand it. When two people share a real romantic relationship, especially one that lasted years, their nervous systems learn each other, their habits synchronize, their emotional responses wire together, their sense of safety becomes partially outsourced to another person. That doesn't just shut off because paperwork changed or the fighting stopped. It fades slowly, unevenly, and often asymmetrically. One person almost always detaches first and the other adapts. Sometimes the detachment is mutual, in theory, but not in practice. Sometimes it feels clean until one of them dates again. Sometimes it feels resolved until a quiet night, a moment of loneliness, or a familiar voice brings everything rushing back. This is why people so often mislabel unfinished attachment as friendship. It feels calmer than a relationship and safer than no contact. It feels mature to say, we're still friends, and it lets both people avoid the pain of a clean ending. This one comes up more than once in my process. A woman makes it past the initial texting conversation, seems interesting, we get to the phone calls, hours long sometimes, then it slips out. Constant contact with an ex, daily texts, advice seeking, emotional check-ins, or the ex is like family because of the kids, but it goes way beyond logistics. With several of my last relationships, ex involvement was an issue early. It drained energy and split focus. Same with a few others who got to the call stage. Red flags popped up, no room left emotionally, ex plus adult kids taking most of it. I ended it there and saved the meat and further investment. My vetting catches this because if they're that tied to an ex, they don't have full capacity for anything new. You feel it. Pushed to the side while old attachments linger. Now, add children into the mix. Children are the most commonly cited justification and the most frequently misused one. When kids are young, coordination is necessary. Schedules and logistics matter. Information has to be exchanged. But there's a difference between co-parenting and emotional availability. And that's the part they won't admit to. Co-parenting looks like this. Can you pick her up at 3 on Thursday? Soccer practice moved to 6. She needs her inhaler refilled. It doesn't look like, how was your day? I saw that thing you posted. I've been thinking about what you said last week. One is coordination, the other is emotional intimacy. And when the child is an adult, even the coordination excuse disappears entirely. At that point, ongoing constant contact isn't about parenting, it's about comfort, familiarity, and keeping a door open that no one wants to admit still exists. I've heard people explain this with complete sincerity. We're just close because of the kids. He's always been there for me. We've been through so much together. All of which may be true, and all of which describe a bond that has not been broken, just rebranded. Then there's the explanation people lean on when they want to sound especially confident. He has a girlfriend now. This one gets said like a shield, like proof and evidence that nothing inappropriate could possibly happen. It misunderstands something fundamental about how desire for men works. Commitment and desire are not mutually exclusive. Attachment and opportunity do not cancel each other out. A man can be in a relationship and still emotionally orient towards someone from his past without ever acting on it. He can tell himself he's moved on while still responding instantly to her texts. He can give advice, listen to dating complaints, offer reassurance, and feel useful in a way that scratches an old itch. Research shows men often rate pragmatic or access motives higher. Being the one she still turns to, the one who knows her history, and the one who understands her patterns, well, that role carries emotional weight. And emotional weight doesn't disappear just because someone else is technically in the picture. Men often maintain deep emotional proximity to a former romantic partner when there's at least a dormant desire for reconnection. Studies link it to more pragmatism or opportunity in men, not friendship, desire. It doesn't have to be active or conscious. It doesn't even have to be sexual, but it exists, and it waits. Waiting doesn't look like waiting when there's no pressure. It looks like being supportive, being available, and steady presence who never quite leaves. And when the timing shifts, like when a relationship ends, when loneliness hits, or defenses are down, that proximity suddenly reveals what it always contained. This is why so many people are shocked when boundaries collapse out of nowhere. It wasn't out of nowhere, it was always there. And then there's the argument designed to end the conversation entirely. I would never do anything with him again, so it doesn't matter what he wants. I wouldn't let it happen, so why don't you trust me? This one is effective because it shifts the entire conversation away from what's actually happening and makes it about your character instead. Suddenly, the person who's uncomfortable is the one on trial. They're being asked to prove they trust you. They're being framed as insecure, controlling, or damaged. And most people don't want to be seen that way, so they get scared and immediately back down. But this isn't about trust. It's about proximity. Trust is whether you believe someone will honor their commitments. Proximity is how close they're keeping someone who represents a threat to those commitments. You can trust someone completely and still recognize that they're maintaining a level of emotional intimacy with an ex that creates unnecessary risk. Attachment doesn't work on a simple on-off switch. It can show itself in a moment of weakness, so why take that risk? If he still wants you, and you're still emotionally available to him, and you're still filling needs for each other that look an awful lot like what partners do, then I would never let that happen is a promise you might not be able to keep. Because desire doesn't wait for permission. It builds slowly in small moments, in late-night conversations, in shared history, in the comfort of someone who knows you in a way that no one else does. And by the time you realize the line is blurred, it's already been crossed. I've heard this story more times than I can count. I don't know how it happened. It just sort of happened. We were just talking, and then that's what happens when people mistake intention for immunity. It's not about a single decision in a single moment. It's about 1,000 small decisions over time that create conditions where boundaries collapse without anyone noticing until it's too late. So it's not that you don't trust them. It's that you don't trust the situation they're choosing to stay in. And if that distinction makes you defensive, that's worth examining. Because people who genuinely have nothing to protect don't usually feel the need to defend proximity to an ex this hard. Another explanation people offer is that the breakup was mutual and healthy, and they both wanted it. There's no resentment or lingering emotion. Only the thing about truly mutual healthy breakups is they involve distance. Not hostility or drama, but distance. If you need constant contact to prove how mature and evolved you both are, it's putting on a show. Real detachment doesn't require an audience. Healthy breakups still involve mutual loss. Decisions don't erase attachment, they make it easier to avoid confronting it. When two people agree to end something, especially after years together, there's often a sense of relief layered over grief. The conflicts stop, the pressure lifts, the familiarity remains. Staying friends lets people keep the relief without actually fully processing the grief. And grief that isn't processed just goes quiet. It doesn't disappear until someone new enters the picture. That's when tension usually shows up. The new partner notices that things don't feel right. The volume of communication, the intimacy of the conversations, the way certain topics are reserved for someone else. And when those concerns are raised, they're often dismissed as insecurity or misunderstanding, and that their relationship with their ex is somehow different. But discomfort is information. People don't feel threatened by nothing. Most people don't want to be the jealous one. They don't want to seem controlling, and they don't want to challenge something that's been framed as mature and evolved. So they swallow it until it becomes impossible to ignore. At some point, someone realizes they're competing with a ghost that still texts back. And staying close to an ex often serves the person who hasn't fully rebuilt their emotional life yet. It fills gaps, provides validation, and softens loneliness. And it also delays growth. Real detachment requires absence. It requires learning how to regulate without that person, how to feel seen without them, how to build a new identity that doesn't include constant reference to a shared past. Friendship after a relationship isn't impossible, but it's rare. And research shows it usually needs real distance first, often months or years, plus time to heal independently and clear boundaries that most people skip. The distance has to be real, not the kind where you take space for 2 weeks and then slide right back into daily texting. Real distance, enough that both of you rebuild lives separately and stop using each other as emotional safety nets. The time has to be sufficient, enough that the relationship feels like a chapter closed instead of a bookmark. And the boundaries have to be clear, not flexible ones that shift when someone feels lonely. When those conditions aren't present, what remains is attachment with a different label. So if you're listening to this and recognizing yourself, either as the one maintaining the connection or the one trying to date someone who is, here's what you need to do. Ask yourself what role this person still plays in your emotional life. Not what you call them, but what they actually do. Who do you call when you're lonely? Who do you text when something good or bad happens? Who still has immediate access to you anytime they want? Those answers tell the truth more clearly than labels ever will. And if you're the one on the other side, dating someone who insists everything is fine, pay attention to how much emotional space you're being asked to share with someone you've never met. Healthy relationships require room to exist, not constantly competing with the past. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do for everyone involved is admit that that chapter didn't really close, and that pretending it did isn't helping anyone move forward. Not every ending has to be angry, but some endings need to be final if you want to start something new with someone else. Because friendship that blocks future intimacy is fear of dealing with the end of a relationship like an adult, and eventually someone always pays for that fear. If the answer is anything close to what a partner does, stop calling it a friendship. Real friendship doesn't compete with a relationship, create confusion, or require justification or explanation. If you have to explain why it's okay, it probably isn't. And if someone new in your life is uncomfortable with how close you still are to your ex, that discomfort is important information about an ongoing relationship you're hanging on to, not jealousy or insecurity of the person bringing it up. Listen to that. Because in many cases, the other person never brings it up and simply leaves, citing other reasons, feeling it's not worth bringing up. It's likely been a factor in many of your failed relationships and you don't even realize it. Because the person who's willing to walk away rather than compete with your past might be the person who actually deserves your future. Don't let it be you who pays for someone else's unfinished business, and don't let someone else pay for yours.